There has been a 15% decline in creation of Facebook groups. How would you fix it? Slack email notification open rate has declined by 10%. Why? Hello everyone, this is Shambhavi, and today I'm going to teach you how to ace root cause analysis questions. I'm doing this in two parts. This is part one, where I will be sharing a versatile framework that will not just help you come up with a solid answer for any root cause question, but also get strong hire from the hiring team. In part two, I will walk you through an end-to-end example using this framework. So let's get started. Root cause analysis questions come in the category of product execution questions, where you are presented with a scenario where a metric has undergone a change and you have to address it. For example, there has been a 15% decline in creation of Facebook groups. How will you address it? Slack email notification open rate has decreased by 10%. Fix it. Before we get into the actual framework, I want to share with you what interviewers are really looking for in these types of questions. They're actually looking for three things. First, understanding the metric in relation to the overall product. What this means is that, do you understand how this metric measures the value that the product provides to all its customer segments, as well as the company itself? Second, data-driven hypothesis building. Are you able to come up with a hypothesis based on the data that you gather by asking a ton of questions during your interviews? And third, and the last, is the ability to come up with the action steps. Can you arrive at a strong point of view on what the next steps should be? This is to really assess how would you do or what would you do when you're actually on the job. First, understand the impact of the metric in context of the product. This is such an important step, and I see candidates missing this all the time. They directly get into eliminating the potential causes without putting enough thought on the unique situation that they have got. If you miss this step, your approach to all the root cause questions would be same, irrespective of what the product is, what the metric is. And that's not how the real on-the-job product management works. If you do this, you showcase mature understanding of the product execution skills, and you get a ton of bonus points from the interviewers right away. If you have to take one thing from this video, it should be this. And I will elaborate more on this using an example in a bit. Let's go to step two. The second step is to get data to eliminate potential root causes. You will ask a lot of questions during this step to get insights that will inform your hypothesis, which is our step number 3, where you will create your hypothesis and validate it. The last step, that is step number 4 of this framework, is stating your action. Your job as a product manager is not just to identify the root cause, but also conclude whether the change in the metric is acceptable or not acceptable. And if it is not acceptable, what is the action that you are going to take? Your interviewer may not ask you about the action step explicitly most of the times, but go ahead and do this and you will thank me later. So let's get deeper in the 4 steps of this framework, starting with the first one, which is understanding this metric in context of the product. There are 2 things to be done here. First part of this step is to comprehend how this metric is defined. Sometimes it's straightforward and sometimes there is ambiguity. For example, if they tell you user engagement of TikTok is down, do they mean views, likes, shares, or all of them? So it is important to really understand the metric definition. The second part of this step is thinking about the impact of the change on the overall product. For this, try to think about the product's North Star metric and how this given metric is related to the North Star metric, or maybe it is the North Star metric. Doing this step is going to help you assess whether the change in the metric is certainly bad or it looks bad on the surface but may not be actually bad. Let me give you an example to explain what I mean by this. But before that, very quickly, what is the North Star metric? Simply put, North Star metric is something that captures the product's core value for all its customer segments, including the platform itself. So let's say you are given a situation where there is a certain decline in the number of orders for DoorDash. For DoorDash, number of orders is the North Star metric. Think about it. Number of orders truly captures the value that DoorDash has for all its customers, be it the restaurants, the consumers, and as a platform for itself as well. So if the number of orders is going down, it is certainly bad. However, let me give you another example. If they tell you that number of videos watched on YouTube is going down, it is a different scenario. The North Star for YouTube, that is something that captures the core value of YouTube to all its customer segments, that is creators and viewers, as well as the platform itself, is something called watch time. And watch time is different than number of videos watched. If watch time is more, it means that the viewers are enjoying more content for longer. The creators are creating content that resonates with the viewers, and YouTube has a great opportunity to show ads. And again, watch time is different than number of videos watched. It is possible that people are engaging in long format, high duration videos and engaging with them for a longer time, which can mean that the number of videos watched may reduce. But that's not a bad thing for YouTube at all. So we need to explore a metric further with this perspective of North Star metric to really understand if the change is good, bad, or it needs to be explored further with a set of more questions for the interviewer. Did you see how important it is to understand the metric change in context of the overall product? I cannot stress enough the importance of this step. This is a differentiator for a strong hire, and it helps you get a mature grasp on what is happening. So that was step 1 of my 4-step framework. It was simple, wasn't it? Just 2 things you need to make sure. 1, make sure that you have clarity on the definition of the metric. And step 2, understand the change or the impact of the change on the overall product using the North Star metric method that I just shared. Let's go to step 2. So this is the step where you have to get very chatty with your interviewer. So what you have to do is you have to get data and start eliminating potential root causes. So this is more of a tactical step. And what you really want the interviewers to be noticing is that you are not someone who is going to make assumptions. You are actually someone who is going to investigate all possible causes with the objective mindset. And that's what you have to showcase. So I suggest that you keep these set of questions in your mind, and then during the actual interview, ask questions that make sense and that are relevant to the situation. The first question to ask here is on the nature of the change itself. Is the change sudden or gradual? Is it something that we have seen before? Is it seasonal? A good call out that you can do in your mind is that if a change is sudden, it cannot be a behavioral change because that change takes time to reflect. It may be a system glitch, but we're not sure at this time. And so we'll just move on further. Next, it is important to make sure that the change that you are seeing is not due to any system issues, especially if the change is sudden. So you should ask here if the dashboard that you're using to see the change has undergone a change, if there is a change in underlying tables, pipelines, or the query itself. Do not spend too much time here. Next, Think about how this metric is computed and if there is any change in the related metrics. For example, if there is a decrease in revenue, and we know that revenue is dependent on number of orders as one of the factors, has number of orders gone up, down, or remained the same? The answer to this question will help you to decide whether the metric in question has to be treated in isolation or you have to include other metrics in your analysis. Next, we start slicing this data using various attributes to see if the change is skewed in any specific data sets. So let's start with traffic, whether the increase or decrease is coming from a specific traffic channel, say social, paid, or direct. Next, do the same thing with region, that is the location. Then do the slicing with platform and device type. Now, if your interviewer tells you that the change is coming from iOS or Android, for example, it'll be good to familiarize yourself with the models that these Play Store and the App Store follow with respect to the commission and the privacy policies, because that will help you to come up with some hypotheses. On the other hand, if the interviewer tells you that the change is in mobile and not in web or vice versa, it'll be good to think about if there are any changes or any differences in the user experience, because that is one of the key difference when it comes to web versus mobile because of the real estate. Once we're done with the slicing with these attributes, let's get into the customer segments. For example, if there is a drop in the monthly recurring revenue from Microsoft Teams, it'll be good to know if the change or the drop is coming from the small, medium businesses or the enterprises. Then don't forget the partner ecosystem. And go ahead and ask your interviewer if there is a change or an end in partnership. For example, I know that Slack and Dropbox have this strategic partnership to address the needs of small and medium businesses. And so if this partnership were to come to an end, it will definitely impact the businesses. So it's a good question to ask. By slicing the data using all these attributes, maybe you have got something useful, or maybe you have not. If you did, hold on to it during your interview and then move to the next category of getting data, which is external. External factors typically include any press about the company or a move made by a competitor. For example, recently Google said that they will no longer support unlimited storage of photos. And this may, in a way, impact if you are OneDrive and if your question is related to OneDrive storage. External factors can also include economic factors like inflation that would reduce the purchasing power of the consumers. And it also includes environmental factors such as COVID-19, which resulted in a boost for virtual productivity softwares. The last category of data is internal factors. And the first one here is about a new feature launch. Let's dig into to see how a new feature launch can impact a metric change. Now, one way that a new feature launch can change a metric is through cannibalization. So let's say you're looking at a decline in engagement in Facebook groups after the launch of Facebook Marketplace. It is reasonable for it to happen because there will be decreased activity in buy and sell groups because people will just use Facebook Marketplace. Another example of cannibalization is when Amazon launched one-click buy, and there was definitely a decline in add to carts. So a new feature launch led to cannibalization of a feature, resulting in change in a metric. But you know, a new feature launch doesn't always result in cannibalization, but it can still drive a metric change. So for example, if you are asked to investigate an increase in the RSVP rate for Facebook events, it might not be because of any cannibalizing feature, but just a feature that reduced the steps required to RSVP, resulting in a better user experience and hence more RSVPs. So something to keep in mind when you are thinking through the internal factor of new product launches or new feature launch. Other things to watch out in this category of internal factors is a layout change, a design change, end of a contract, or a promotion. Sometimes, especially in the B2B space, companies do give promotional offers during the onboarding time, and when they do come to an end, there is a change in the metric. So something to watch out for. By this time, you would have gathered a lot of data, and you would have eliminated a lot of potential root causes, and maybe you would have left with one or two. This is a time when you should frame your hypothesis and work with your interviewer to prove or disprove them. Let me give you an example. So let's say that the question that comes your way is that YouTube watch time has decreased by 20%. What will you do? So if you have followed the step 1 and 2 of my framework, so far you would have gotten something like following. First, watch time is YouTube's North Star metric, and a 20% decline in watch time is a big deal. It's not a good thing. Secondly, if you have followed the series of questions and asked those questions to the interviewer, let's say you got something like following. The decline or the drop is steep. It's coming from all regions, all traffic, all customer segments. This decline is coming from the free version of YouTube and not the premium. And the decline is coming primarily from the app. When analyzing the internal factors, you learned that YouTube recently launched an app update that allowed YouTube to use or display a new ad format in place of the recommended videos, which moved the recommended video section below the fold. You also learned that the drop is coming from the app that used this new version. So when you have all these insights, I would come up with a hypothesis like this. Launching the new ad format that moves the recommended video section below the fold has resulted in the 20% decline in YouTube watch time because it makes it less likely for the customer or the user to click on the recommended videos. When you have the hypothesis, check with your interviewer to validate it and confirm that this indeed is the root cause. Once you're done with it, you are now at the last and final step, that is step 4, where you have to state your action. So once you have narrowed it down to the root cause, it's time to think about the best course of action. And depending on the use case, it might be no action at all, but you need to walk your interviewer through your thought process of this recommendation. The first thing is to mention whether the change is good or bad. And I taught you this by thinking about the impact on the North Star metric. Once you know if the change is good or bad, think about what is the acceptable range for this change, and is the change in that range or not. If you don't have enough data to say what's the acceptable range, talk about what are the experiments that you will run, what data you will gather, and what your decision tree may look like. And lastly, talk about what are the steps that you will take to bring the metric back on track if it's a bad change. So for the YouTube watch time example that we just talked about, here is what my action step will look like. First, I will call out that this is certainly a bad change as it significantly reduces our watch time, our North Star metric of watch time. 20% is a big impact, and so I will roll back this change immediately. Make sure that you are decisive when you state your action, especially when you are talking about rolling out or rolling back a feature. The second thing that I would do is come up with an alternate solution that would help me keep the benefit of this new ad format, if any. So first I'll investigate that. And if there is benefit, I would work with my designer to launch or redesign this feature in a way that helps me keep the benefit so that our advertisers get higher returns, as well as make sure that our watch time is not impacted, which is the North Star metric and is good for the long term of the company. So one way that comes at the top of my head right now is showing this new ad format after the video that was playing has ended, and showing it at that spot rather than replacing the recommended video section. And I would work with the designer to come up with more optimized placement of this new ad format. The last thing that I would do is to come up with a launch plan. So the last step would be to launch this redesigned feature as a A/B test starting with 1% population with a clear launch criteria. As a product managers, whenever we launch something, we have to launch it with something called a launch criteria, which defines the key range of the input metrics that need to be met in order to ramp this experiment to 100% population. And along with that we need to make sure that the North Star metric or the primary metric is not negatively impacted. So there you go. 4 steps to ace your root cause analysis questions. With that, we come to an end. And here's a quick recap of what you learned. Step 1, understand the impact of the metric in context of the product. So understand the metric definition. Is it a North Star metric? And how is it related to the North Star metric? To assess if it's a good or a bad change. Step 2, get data to eliminate potential root causes. I recommend that you keep all the attributes and the questions that I talked about in step 2, keep them in your mind, and use the time in the interview to just think about them and apply those questions that are relevant to the situation. This way, you will make sure that you come across as someone who is thinking holistically and not making assumptions, another characteristic of a strong hire. Step 3, arrive at 1 or 2 strong hypotheses and work with your interviewer to validate them. Make sure that you clearly communicate a well-rounded hypothesis at the end of this step, because this is the sort of a tangible deliverable from all the work that you've done so far. So from all the interaction and questions that you've asked, this is something tangible that you are delivering to the interviewer. So make sure you do that. Step 4, state your action. Be decisive. Be decisive as if it's nobody's business. Making decisions with less data will go a long way for you as a product manager. So there you go. 4 steps to ace your root cause analysis questions. If you found this video valuable, show me some love by liking, sharing, and commenting on this video. Want to watch me answer a root cause question using the framework that I just taught you? Wait for part 2, where I'll be answering a question thrown at me by a senior product manager from Amazon, who is also a coach on our platform, Mentor Me Good. Till then, all the best. You got this.